Welcome to Your Sport Swindon. I'm delighted to be joined by Richie Woodhall tonight. How are you doing, Richie?
Very good, thank you. Very good indeed.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to talk a little bit about Jamie Cox, a boxer that you know very well from a few years back. What do you make of his career, the way it's panned out so far?
Well, it's been stop-start, hasn't it, with Jamie? But I think the talent is there. It's always been there. He's a very good lad, is Jamie Cox, when he boxes to his potential. Can tend to get tied up a little bit too much with his opponents in toe-to-toe battles, because he's a better boxer than what people give him credit for. And what I mean by that is he can keep his distance, he can box behind his jab, he can control things a little bit better. He's a little bit, should I say, not hot-headed in the ring, but at the same time, I think he can lose it a little bit mentally and then want to start to trade with his opponents, probably a little bit too much. We know he's got power, we know he's strong, but I'd probably like to see him box a little bit more at distance, because like I say, he's a very good distance boxer when he wants to be.
What was he like to work with all those years ago that you were working with him? Because that was right at the start of his career, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was great. I mean, obviously, you know, I go back a long way with Jamie. I remember first seeing him when he boxed for England, and he went to the Commonwealth Games, I think 2006, and got a great gold medal out there in Melbourne. And he boxed tremendously well. So you could see there he had the amateur pedigree as an England international. He boxed tremendously well for England, and I could see then that there was, you know, he had a lot of potential. So when I first started working with him, when he first turned pro, he was a pleasure to work with. He trained really hard. He understands that he's got to train hard, and you've got to run in the mornings, and you've got to be disciplined. I think when he came to me, we set up a base in Birmingham, because I don't live too far from Brum, and he came up and then went home on a weekend, and it was a good situation, because obviously there are distractions at home at the time for Jamie then, and so to get him away up in Birmingham in a training camp, it was a good idea, I thought. And I think his results showed that. I think he boxed really well at times, and like I say, I remember training him with my old man, my dad, and he trained very hard, and he knows what he's got to do. So it's in his own hands, really.
Well, what do you make of him now? He's had the last 3 fights, 3 explosive knockouts against opposition that on paper should be staying in there a little longer, and now he's in the position where nobody wants to fight him in that super middleweight division or in the middleweight division.
Yeah.
You know, where does he go from here, and how good can he now be?
Well, I'd still question whether he's in the right division, because I think Jamie Cox is probably at best a middleweight. He's up at super middle, and it shows that he's got a lot of power, because he's knocking guys out at super middle. If he can make middle, you know, it's going to be a little bit harder in terms of his dedication. He's got a knuckle down. He probably could still make middleweight, and then he will be a ferocious force at middle. Having said that, if he decides to stay at super middle, then, you know, it's a tough division. You've got good fighters in there, and you're like, you know, your James de Gales at the top of the tree. Even you got kids who have just fought for a world title, Frank Buglioni, who I'm sure he'd like to get it on with. There's George Groves there as well. It's very decent. And then, of course, there's Callum Smith, who's a British champion now. So he's in a tough division, but all my advice to him would be, he's just got to keep winning. If he keeps winning, I think he's about 20-0 now, isn't he? If he keeps winning, he can't be ignored at the end of the day. But like I say, if he will know in his own heart if he can make middleweight, and if he can, then my advice would be to go down to middleweight. If he can make middle and still retain his strength, it will be a little bit more difficult in terms of he's got to train a little bit harder. You know, he's got to be a little bit more dedicated. But he'll know that in himself. And if he feels that I could make middle, he should drop down to middle. But it shows his potential. If he's knocking guys out at super middle, then he's got a lot of power. And he's a talented lad. I've always liked him.
Do you think he could be a force at super middle? I mean, you're obviously recommending that he maybe goes to middle, but could he be a force at super middle?
Well, look at the fighters I've just mentioned. You know, your Callum Smith's, he's a quality kid, Callum Smith. And you've even got kids a little bit lower down from Callum Smith, like his own brother, Paul Smith, Frank Buglioni, George Groves, De Gale. It's a tough division, even Rocky Fielding. Jamie will want to mix it with all them. Of course he will, because he's a fighter, he's a natural fighter, and he'll want to try and get it on with any of them. But I just question whether he could make middleweight. And if he could make middleweight, I think he'd be a more potent force at middle than he would at super middle. But that's up to him, and he'll, as I say, he'll know that in himself. Can he be a force at super middle? Of course he can, but it might be a little bit more difficult.
But certainly would be a force at middleweight, in your opinion.
Oh, absolutely. You know, at middleweight, you know, he's got guys down there like Billy Joe Saunders, Chris Eubank Jr., Nick Blackwell. Now that would be a great local fight, wouldn't it? Because he's from Swindon. Is he from Trowbridge? Is it Trowbridge, which is not too far away, and obviously Jamie's from Swindon. So think about that for the contest. And you know, both of them would be. They'd be like that, both of them. Yeah, I fancy it, and he'd say, yeah, I fancy it. So that would be a great fight. If he can drop down, then he should.
And what do you make of your old division now at super middleweight? You're obviously always an avid watcher. It's exciting times, isn't it?
Exciting times. I think James DeGale, he's a very, very talented boxer indeed. Obviously a world champion, so yeah, tremendous. You've still got George Groves there. And of course now Callum Smith, who for me, as a British champion, he's a class act, is Callum Smith. So yeah, it's exciting times. It always has been since the late 80s, early 90s with your Eubanks, your Collins and Benz, and obviously Calzaghe ruled the roost, didn't he, for all those years. So yeah, I look back, I'm proud of what I did, and I was in a tough division, and it's remained a tough division, and long may that continue.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Cheers. Thank you, Richie.